purpose of youth football is to promote football with a Bermuda at the grassroots level. Our main focus is try to foster the love for the game and the interest so that it's at a level for everybody to play. So we look at the level from people who just like to play as recreational and work on the pathways to get them towards the National Academy, which would then come under the PDC, which would be the elite level.
At what age of the youth program, because would you consider the PDL to be a youth?
No. Under the youth committee, we go from the under sixes, or under fives, I should say, all the way up to under 16.
Okay.
So the under 16 age group, and then the PDL will come beyond that, and that would be considered senior football.
Okay, so from the under 16s, when do you start looking at being competitive at the youth level?
That would be under 14.
Under 14.
And then, of course, the grassroots, which under FIFA's description is 12 through 6 through 12.
Mm-hmm.
They have an opportunity at the Capot tournament for competition. So to
Right.
speak.
Right. So, and that's the reason behind structuring player registration. Do you have player registration for?
We have player registration from under 8 all the way up.
Oh, okay.
We are going to be looking at implementing for under 5s and under 6s just so we can start following players and seeing where they're actually playing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Obviously, one of the things, there's a lot of talk outside the association, and that was
Sure.
my reason for contacting you, Mr. Reid.
Of course.
Restricting clubs, I would say, not teams, but restricting clubs to a limited amount of players or a limited amount of teams per age group. Am I correct in saying that?
Well, you may have to ask that.
I'll let Mr. Lewis answer that
Okay.
one.
Okay, so first of all, restricting clubs by players is not what we're after. We are restricting clubs based on the amount of teams that can enter the league. One of the biggest challenges that we have is that we have a limited amount of players, but we have a lot of affiliates, and we would like to be able to have more clubs in order to have more clubs to have teams within our leagues. What we don't want is a league that has many teams from one club, and let's say for some reason that club decides that, you know what, I'm not entering, then we may not have a league. So that's some of the thinking that we have to do. But it's also to balance the players throughout the island and throughout our affiliates.
Okay.
There's also a question of resources as well. We're trying to improve the experience of players, coaches, and parents. And we only have a certain amount of resources. When I say resources, we're talking we're talking match commissioners, we're talking field surfaces, we're talking time slots. Right now we play between 8:30 and 3, every Saturday. So there's only a limited amount of time slots that we have. Making sure that everybody has the right type of goals. Those sort of things all come into play in what the leagues can satisfactorily accomplish. So it's twofold. And if we can increase the resources, then maybe we can increase the amount of teams we can cater to in the league as well. So there's 2 points.
Okay, so what are some of the concerns? Let's go pros and cons. So what are some of the concerns you guys have listened to or fielded from clubs? Let's go with what are some of the pluses of concerns that other clubs have or clubs have regarding the youth program?
Well, I mean, I'll go first, and then I'll certainly allow Pinks to speak about it. On the positive side, you have some clubs who have fully embraced the current structure. And I might add, the structure was put in place many years ago. Mm-hmm. And I believe it was Kenny Thompson who first put in the structure that had non-competitive football up until a certain age, and then competitive football after. And some clubs have embraced that concept, and I think those clubs are fairly happy with the structure that's in place. That's certainly on the plus side. some of the concerns obviously is the experience on the day, games starting on time, the environment, which is a nice word for parent behavior and coach behavior. Those are some of the negatives that you hear from parents and clubs.
How are we addressing those concerns?
Well, from the player and coach perspective, it's certainly being tackled through coach education. So the more educated coaches we have, the better their players will be in terms of their technical ability, and two, their deportment. So that's something that's really going well with the relationship between the BFA and the Football Coaches Association. How we tackling sort of the parent side of it, we really try and get clubs to manage their own parents, and that's something that we need to expand upon.
Just also to add, with having match commissioners at the facilities also helps. That's one that any conflicts that may arise in terms of the rules, they have the rules on hand, ensuring that the time slots are adhered to. That's another thing that the match commissioners are able to do. And then when we do have those parents who may be a little bit more vocal, or negatively vocal, I should say, then we have a neutral person who can actually first intervene to try to reduce that sort of behavior before we have to go beyond that. So that is one of the reasons why we have to be aware of how many games and matches we have based on resources, because the match commissioners at youth games really make a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Recently, I was at PHC and I saw you were there, and you came later on, and I wouldn't call it a confrontation, but it was more of a conversation as such with a particular club or member of a particular club, questioning or trying to I guess find out the restrictions of amount of teams in the league. And that's something that I think brought up a conversation like this, is that there are everyone knows there are two clubs that have an abundance of
There's more than two.
There's more than two clubs that have, but there's only two that are having a problem embracing the structure and the rules that are in place.
Okay, well that's good. Okay, so two clubs are having a problem with the structure. How do we address that? How do we because I hear, through parents, through coaches, through the association is stopping players' growth, players' availability to play or ability to play on a Saturday. How do we address it?
Well, there's a few things. Firstly, and it goes back to us trying to manage resources and also trying to ensure that the game grows appropriately. And I'll take a step back and say this: the under 16 league and the under 14 league numbers are dwindling. That's not a secret, and we have to do something to arrest that. And part of, from our perspective, and Troy can expand on this, is that part of that is because we have so many players at a few clubs, and when they get to under 14, they're now unable to play, rather because they don't have the commitment, or they don't believe they have the technical ability to play, and they drift away from the game. Would those players still drift away from the game if they were at another club where they had more opportunity? That's a question that we have to answer. And if we can answer that, and if we can show that there are other clubs where you can get opportunities, potentially we can grow the leagues, and we can grow them appropriately. So that's certainly part of it. I think also nothing stops a club or clubs from organizing their own matches. And so to say that the BFA is stopping anyone's growth, I think is wrong. because I think they have the ability to organize their own matches. And there's nothing stopping that. And to be honest, I think the BFA would support that if somebody decided, you know what, I want to have my own tournament. Can you help me? You know, what's the best time slot for it? Do you have bowls, cones? If it fits in within our strategic plan, of course you will. So I think that's part of it. I think clubs also have to come with some resources as well, and not just coming wanting the BFA to do it all for them. The BFA is a facilitator. The clubs are the primary developers of players in this country, not the BFA. And the BFA facilitates them being able to play matches with the resources that we have at our disposal.
Just to go back in terms of the conversation was basically on the rules of that govern competitive football, which is under 14 and 16. Now the problem being is we are stopping players that are playing if they're in contrary to the rules, i.e. player's card. If you don't have a player's card, you cannot play in the under 14 and 16 league, because that's the only thing that validates you as an eligible player. That's one thing. So when we come across those type of things, people will say we're trying to stop players. What we're trying to do is teach them the correct way to be a player in any league, especially if they want to go beyond the domestic football into international. So if you show up to an international match without your credential, you're not getting inside the changing room. So then you can't play. So this is where we teach them that as well. So maybe they weren't able to play that day, but sure enough, the next week they had the card. And that type of thing goes on. In terms of, just to add on to what Mark's saying as well, is people have to understand that the BFA is only a few volunteers that are helping to try to organize so everybody plays in a good environment and on an even keel or even playing field. And the clubs itself have to find ways of developing resources for the game to be officiated, for new match commissioners, referees, and the like. So we are trying to work with clubs in order for us to grow all aspects of football. Many people and parents alone only worry about their child and the player, but the player, there's so many other people that have to do certain things so that the player can actually play. And that's where our resources are done. And even if we look at senior football, right now we're having a problem with youth referees. Some players who love the game at young may not ever develop to be a premier player, but they may if you give them the experience and the love for the game at young. They may become the next coach. They may become the next best referee. They may become the next great administrator of your club. So when we talk about let's develop only the players that are good in football on the field, we can't forget the other people that help to make that happen. And that's what the BFA is trying to do, get everybody that loves to play football at a young age have an experience of a lifetime that will stay with them.
Mark, you alluded to something that I wanted to bring up as well, and that's the social ills of the country that is constantly affecting all sports in Bermuda, but is always highlighted when it comes to football.
Sure.
We see it, as you said, the numbers are dwindling at the 14 and 16s. How are we trying to address or arrest the situation?
Sure. Well, in the first instance, which is the BASBAC policy, we've actually taken a step back from BASBAC and going to review the policy and review the relationships that the policy depends on, and look to rejuvenate that part of the process. So that's one. Certainly we want our clubs to take more of a role in that area. And when I say more of a role, there's a limit to what clubs can do. Our clubs aren't equipped to deal with some of the issues that young people have. and that's a reality. While the microscope, so to speak, points to the clubs because football is an opportunity for antisocial behavior, but at the same time, are our clubs really equipped to deal with drug abuse, to deal with physical and emotional abuse? Are our clubs really equipped to deal with that? My answer is no, we're not. And what our clubs need is support in order to help deal with those issues. Because there's players that's what they come with. There's players that you see, and there's individuals that you see out in our community who are involved in antisocial behavior and involved in gang life. Those are the issues they have. We're talking about antisocial behavior is the symptom of a wider problem, and our clubs need help in tackling the wider problem. What is the problem? Is this child has he been physically, emotionally, mentally abused as a child and found some semblance of sanity out on the street? Our clubs aren't equipped to deal with that, and we need help to deal with that. Is this child, has he witnessed, or he or she witnessed all manner of behavior from their parents? Our clubs aren't designed to deal with that. We can help, and certainly football globally is looked at as a avenue to tackle these issues. But the reality is that the people working within football, coaches, parents, volunteers, do not have the skill sets that a social worker has, that a psychiatrist has, that a school teacher has. And they require assistance. They require the people that are involved in antisocial behavior require that type of expertise. Can the clubs help? Absolutely. Do they help? Absolutely. Do the clubs have success stories that they can point to where we have successfully intervened in a young person's life? Yes, absolutely. But we don't have the resources. We don't have the tools to deal with that sort of thing, and we need help.
Is that one of the reasons why you're taking a step back from the best back to have a look, see, and then probably solicit organizations' help?
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, my belief is that we need all the agencies to come together and sit around the table and talk about. We can get granular and we can talk specifically about individuals. I have an at-risk kid at under 12 at my club. Do you have him on your radar? Yes, I do. The family center has him on our radar, and this is what we're doing with him. We can speak to his school. Do you have him on your radar? What challenges are you seeing at school? What initiatives that you're doing at school that are working that we can support here at football, or we can support at whatever other activity he is involved in? We don't have that right now. Right now, we're all doing things individually, and it's working haphazardly, and we're not even sure that we're all pulling in the same direction with an individual. And for me, that part is missing, huge, missing. And I don't know whether it's because the value of football is being undervalued by people outside of football. Possibly it is. Possibly it is. And the reality is that you can't undervalue what football brings to the country and then ask why football isn't doing anything.
For the youth committee, what goals do you set yearly, or what goal have you set for this year to accomplish or get through this season? Obviously, because you have to have something in mind of how you want it to grow and what steps you want to make better than was last season. So what are some of those targets you set for the end of the season, what you're hoping to accomplish?
Okay, so let's start off with what we say is the areas that we have major concerns, which is the under-16 league. And so with the under-16 league, last year we played with 4 teams in the Hill League, so each team played each other 3 or 4 times throughout the year. Mm-hmm. And one of our biggest things was trying to find ways of increasing the teams for that age group and come up with different ways and incentives of encouraging them to want to play. So this year we met with many clubs that had players within that age group, found out how many they had, the teams that may not have had enough, and how we can actually modify the rules for that age group to allow for that. So we have increased that age group to allow overage players, almost like the PDL, for under 16, so they can go up to under 18, but they can have 3 players on the field at one time. And we've also looked to give them a better sense of playing. So we're going to be looking at putting some of the under 16 games in front of premier matches, and that's due to start the first Sunday match, I think, is on Sunday. So hopefully that will be something that sparks them to want to come out, because by the time they finish playing, they'll have some fans around to watch them. We've changed the time frame of when we're playing the Saturday matches for that age group, as we know that most of the antisocial behavior is not the people that's playing the game, it's the people that may come around to watch or try to bully people that are playing. Mm-hmm. And so we'll change the time, so there's no longer in the afternoons. These games are now early in the morning. So hopefully that's one deterrent from people having to come up and being early to get involved in antisocial behavior. So we have moved from 4 teams to 7. So that for us is a major success. Now our thing is to help them to keep that 7 teams for the whole season, which is still an ongoing battle to ensure that each team that has the minimum players don't lose any. So that's one thing. We are now videotaping under 16 match. So each week we will have a match that we will videotape so that they can get a copy and see themselves playing. At the end of the match, that one person is picked out to be interviewed from each team. So now they're working a little bit on the interview skills and talking in front of a camera and getting themselves a little bit more comfortable around it. So in that area is where we're increasing. Now at the children's level, where we have abundance of players and teams, our aim is to ensure that the matches and the competitiveness of the groupings are equal. So what we would like to see is a team, let's say if you have 9 matches in a season, you want to have 3 wins, 3 losses, 3 draws, something like that. Mm-hmm. And that means that you're actually balanced, so you're getting both sides of the spectrum. What we don't want is a team that's winning 10-0 every week, because that's no good for him or the people, for that team or the people that they're playing. Mm-hmm. So we started off with a few weeks of festival days to see what teams' levels are at, as well as to ensure that clubs who enter teams had the correct players to be in that age group, and then we grouped them so that the experience for everybody, if you're the newly developed or if you're one of the more developed in that age group, then you're playing against that same level. So that's something that we started this year, and hopefully we've got it right, and we'll reevaluate that again in December to see how that looks over the first half, and then in the second half, if we have to make any changes, then we will. So again, for us, it's making sure that the experience for everybody is enjoyable.
Is that one of the part and parcel of not zoning for youth football? When I say zoning, the East End teams in the East, the Central teams, and the Western teams, is that part and parcel of that? Not doing that is to ensure that there's level play at the age groups?
Well, zoning has been discussed before, but again, I don't think that's going to be good, because then what happens is, just like you say, if a club only has one team and that team is lower developed, then they're not going to enjoy playing, and players ain't going to want to play if you're losing every week by huge numbers. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's only so much a parent, a coach, a club can do to keep them juvenated to come back to next week to lose 10, 12, nothing. Mm-hmm. So I think at this point, zoning will not be a good thing.
How do you keep the clubs interested, or what's the plan to keep the clubs interested and keep the youngsters interested in the sport of football? Because there's so many other things out there now that parents are pulling the kids out of the usuals to go to the
Sure.
other schools?
There's a few things in terms of what do we do next, what do we do in the future. But one of the things that we need to do is get all of our clubs near enough to the same level. We talked earlier about there being a few clubs who have quite a few players, quite a few right through their entire program. But then the question has to be asked, to be frank, of the clubs that don't, why not? Why does a player or his parents feel quite happy traveling from Somerset all the way down to town? And we need to ask that question. We need to ask the question of clubs, of our clubs, what do you need to do to improve? We need to help them to improve. Help them to produce a product that parents want to be involved in. That's going to be the big ask. And some of those conversations are going to be difficult. I'll be frank, they will be. Some of them will be difficult. But I think they need to be heard in terms of us improving all of our clubs. There are centers of excellence, absolutely. And you only need to drive around and have a look and you'll see where their centers of excellence are. But we need to have excellence right through the entire country. And if we can do that, that's another pillar in tackling the problem. So now a parent can now choose, the choice becomes a little bit more difficult than what it is today.
Is that a one-on-one conversation or a grouping? And I say grouping, do you get a group of teams together or is it more one-on-one? Because as we know in Bermuda, not a lot of people like to talk around because sharing my problem, I'm not talking in front of this.
For me, there's going to be one-on-one conversations. We have our club licensing program, which is being run by Neville Tiro, honorary vice president, and also being driven by David Sabir. So that's gonna be pointed at the administrative side of our clubs and how can we improve administratively. What do you need to do administratively better to ensure that you tick all the boxes as far as a business is concerned, and then you tick all the boxes administratively as far as your players, knowing your players, having them register them on time, registering your teams on time. And then the next part of that is technically. And that'll be driven through the technical department and the technical development director, Maurice Luke. What do you need to do to improve technically? Do you have a curriculum and syllabus written down that says this is what my club is, and this is what we teach, and this is how we're going to teach it? That sort of thing. I believe that if we can get clubs thinking on those terms, we can then present something to parents that says, here's an alternative product than where you are today, and make the decision for parents a lot more difficult. Now I have to choose between 3 clubs in my area that all have curriculum and syllabus, all have policies and procedures, all have parent code of conduct, coaches code of conduct, player code of conduct, and they now have to make a decision. Rather than saying, well, it just looks better over there, so I'm going over there. So there's some of the additional things that have to be done. Because to be frank, as a club, I can't look across the fence and say, why do they have all these players, and blame the club that has all the players. That's not the answer. The answer is to look inward and ask, why don't I have all the players? And what can I do to improve my product so I get them?
The real world, you would like that to happen
yesterday. Yes, of course.
But in the real, you're talking a strategy that could possibly take 3 years, 3 to 5 years, for everybody to understand and be up and running. So in the interim, how much do we champion that call? How much do we charge down that line to say, let's get on board, let's get on board? And the other problem is that when administrations change, ideas and directions change. How do we stay on point?
Oh, I would like to jump in there. In terms of 3 to 5 years, yes, we always want to look at a 3 to 5 year plan. We have our strategic plan that we work beyond, and when we do look at a change in administration, then we already have the strategic plan that's in place.
I'm not talking about the association. I'm
Wow.
talking about the club.
Well, I'm saying
Right.
the association's strategic plan is to help to empower the clubs to follow that same path.
Right.
So once we, with the first steps of the club licensing, to find out where clubs are at, that allows us at the BFA to then help them to facilitate their pathway to get to the level that we're looking for as the facilitators of football. So I don't say we're taking baby steps. I think each year we're making drastic inroads into clubs becoming more organized, more professionally run, and better administratively, as well as players understanding why certain things are done the way they are, in terms of why rules are certain ways, why we have to respect the referees, and why the referees interpret the rules based on their knowledge and understanding education.
All right. So overall, are you guys happy or satisfied with the direction in which youth football has taken thus far through the season?
Well, I'm going to say it this way. I'm a coach. I'm never satisfied. No, satisfied is not a word I would use. Always looking for somewhere to improve, absolutely. Always challenging ourselves. I'm going to always challenge Mr. Lewis here on how we can improve. And certainly, and I expect it from the executive, I expect it from our clubs, I expect it from our parents. Not to be satisfied, and always challenging. How can we improve?
At the national level, we've had an abundance of success at the youth levels. How do we strategize to ensure, number one, we stay, and number two, we improve?
Sure. Well, we have to look at how we improved. Mm-hmm. What were the factors in the successes?
Can you name a few?
What the factors in the
Yeah,
successes?
yeah.
Sure. I think having our national teams together and training over a long period. Some of this stuff started in 2006. Mm-hmm. So we're 10 years on, and we've seen improvements in those areas. So we've had 2 iterations of a national academy. We have a national curriculum and syllabus that hopefully I'm not stealing Mr. Lewis' thunder, but we'll be rolling out to our clubs that our national academy coaches are working to. It's the evolving of the protocols, the traveling protocols. Mm-hmm. It's some of the preparation. So the preparation in 2006 towards 2008 was very good. We had the resources then to do that. Those teams had the Dallas Cup for 2 years. They had Clyde Best Trophy for 2 years. They went to Minnesota Cup. So they had a lot of experience. So that we know works. Can we find the resources to reproduce that? And we're working towards that as well. The previous strategic plan for the BFA has worked in that we have several players abroad in prep school or boarding school, several players in college, several players in the UK in academies and in different levels of academies. And then to the under-20s are a prime example of a team that we can't get together as much as we like. And they come together, intelligent enough players that the coach can lay out a philosophy and lay out a strategy for a game day, and it's successful. So that strategic plan has worked in those areas. Those areas have worked. So those are some of the reasons behind the success. but we have to find solutions to the challenges that they present to us. So the challenge is we have more and more players overseas. How can we make sure that they continue to perform well at the international level? We have the same problem as every other country now. So how can we do that? That's some of the challenges. So the under 10s have achieved something that is in our strategic plan. It's not a mistake. It's not a fluke. There's work been done to get to this point. So we have to kind of reproduce that. We have to pull out what was working. We have to change what we didn't quite go well. So it's a work in progress. We have goalkeeping coaches now. We have a goalkeeper coach that comes on from Canada when we can get him here. We're seeing results there where he's been able to work with specific players, and we're seeing some little bits of success in the goalkeeping area. Where we now have an abundance of goalkeepers. We need to continue that.
Right.
You continue that. And then you're seeing where coaching education is succeeding as well. And we need to keep that progress going to now have over 20 UEFA B licensed coaches. That's fantastic. And we have to continue our support of the Coaches Association to continue that success.
One would say when the government committed the funding to the association,
Mm-hmm.
the performances on the field weren't good.
Mm-hmm.
Now that the funding isn't quite where it used to be, the performances are better.
Mm-hmm.
Some would say that you're performing better with less.
Well, I wouldn't agree with that. But what we have done is, when we did have funding, we were developing what we have as a product now.
Mm-hmm.
So just because we have success today, it didn't start from what we done today. It started from what we done way back then. And with those fundings, we were able to have a wider platform to work from to get to the pinnacle that we're sitting at this point. So having funding allows us to broaden our base, introduce new ideas, expose the players to a lot more things, especially earlier in their football careers, so that then they can become a better player than they would have than waiting to when they have to compete for the national team or even at the youth level, and saying that's the first time they've been exposed to any of this. Traveling, for one thing, traveling long distance, being up late at night, getting in a place and what you like to eat is not cooked the way you. Those type of things all play a part. And back then we were able to expose them to those type of things. Expose them to when you get to a place and you know what, your food's just not going to be there. Although it should be, it's just not. And some of those things are by design, and they have to be ready for it. Now, if you look at our players, they already expect the rest, and if anything else, they're already ready for it. So it doesn't take them off their game on the field.
Yeah, that's a real simplistic example,
Right.
but it's a reality.
Yeah.
Some of the players that are in the senior national team now were 12 and traveling and dealing with these issues. So to them now, it's par for the course, and they know how to adjust and still perform at the highest level on the pitch.
In a few months' time, the under-20s will be in what I want to call uncharted waters.
Good word.
But to accomplish something that they've accomplished and get to those waters, what's the expectation of the association? Because Bermuda's expectation is going to be one thing, but we have to be realistic in how we make sure that those goals that the association set are also applauded by Bermuda or supported by Bermuda. So what's the expectation for the association?
My expectation is that they do well, and they focusing on the games themselves one at a time, and results will come their way. Yes, they're in uncharted waters. They're playing the top end of CONCACAF, and they're going to be playing countries that have advanced into the World Cup at under 20 and at senior level. So they have a challenge. I know they're up to it, and I'm expecting to see some very good things.
And
No pressure.
yeah, I mean, for me is every game, and girls win the game, and giving up less girls, you have a chance of winning the game. And I think that our team is got some new experience playing also in the finals at the CFU, where they had a chance to see teams like Haiti play and see the level of expectation that they needed to reach. And I believe that they're willing to put the work in to get close, if not on par, with the teams that they will be playing. So for me, is every game can be won by any team. You haven't won the game before the game starts. You haven't won the game until the last whistle. And so if our players take each team and go out and give their best, at the end of the day, regardless of the result, we'll be happy, and they would also be happy with their performance. If you give 100%, that's all you can give.